Hello, this is Abby.
Dear Abbey, this is gonna be a long one.
Oh boy.
Dear Abbey, how do you tell the difference between a new exciting crush and a rebound?
Does it matter?
Dear Abbey.
Dear Abbey.
Dear Abbey.
Welcome to our little corner of the internet. This is the Dear Abbey podcast. I hope you stay and hang out with us. See you in a sec. Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of Dear Abbey. I am your humble host. My name is Abby. Welcome back to my podcast. This week has been a very special week. I'm feeling renewed. I'm feeling hopeful. I'm feeling put back together because BTS is back together. Now, call me dramatic, but I feel like a hole in my heart has been filled a little bit with BTS being back together. They launched their new album. They released it. I've listened to it how many times? Yes. How many times have you listened to their album? Yes. I could talk about them probably the whole entire episode, but I'm not going to because that's not what this episode is about. All of it. However, that is going to be my dub. And my in the details is telling you a quick story about why I love BTS. But moving on really fast, the topic of today's episode, the main topic of today's episode is about being seen and being perceived. And there can be a fear for some of us and some people of being perceived. I saw a clip of Matt Mercer, who's the game master for Critical Role. And I just saw this in passing. I think I was scrolling over the weekend and I saw a clip and he was talking about, I don't know exactly what specifically, but he was talking about the fear of being perceived and how uncomfortable he can feel on camera and self-conscious. I related to that so very much. And I appreciated the honesty and sharing that in this tiny clip that I saw. But that's really all I heard him talk about. And it just made something click for me, the way that he described that as just you're scared of being perceived, as that clicked for me, that is a problem that I have. That is something I also struggle very deeply with, is the fear of being seen and the fear of people noticing things and perceiving me and noticing my flaws and how maybe I look different in person than maybe online, or even online if I show a certain angle and different things that I don't think I look pretty in. And I think this is very common for both women and men in this day and age where there's a lot of cameras, there's a lot of pictures, videos, and comparison. But I also think it's probably been around since the beginning of time. Perception of other people and their beauty that is being perceived by other people has always been around, But also I think there's a deeper aspect to that when I was pondering that within myself as to what feels so dreadful about being perceived and people seeing me for who I am, which is both the good and the bad, the good sides, the bad sides. Going along with that, I wanted to share what kind of exposure work you can do to help with this experience of being self-conscious in front of a camera, in front of other people. We'll get into the details, but that's what we're talking about, the main topic of today's episode. And then we're going to do Dear Abbey, and that'll be it. So to jump right into the details, we're not really going to do dubs and L's because I wanted to share my BTS story to my listeners because this is a part of me and a part of my story. And also, I just love BTS. I love talking about them. I can nerd out about them. I just am a fangirl through and through. I actually used to do reaction videos when I did live streams on Twitch. Did I get a lot of views? No. Did I like doing it? Yes. Here we go. Let's jump into the details. I'm going to tell a quick story. And the story is very much intertwined with my divorce and everything I went through with my ex-husband. The first experience I had with BTS's music was on Spotify. I somehow found their music on Spotify a long time ago before I even got married to my ex-husband. Oh, what was the first song I ever listened to? I think it was Idol or Fake Love. Fake Love was the first song I ever heard of BTS. And I loved it. I would go on runs to it at the rec center in Arizona. I would always put Fake Love on. I would run. I always would see their name, BTS, on the bottom of songs that I listened to on like from that point on, but I never really looked them up. I just like, oh, I like their music. I didn't even really know that I didn't know what like K-pop was, or, you know, what like a K-pop idol was. I didn't understand and didn't know the culture behind it. I just liked the music. Didn't know who each of their voices were. No idea. Then a year or two pass. I get married to my ex-husband. I still love their music. I find them on YouTube when Dynamite came out, or I think it was or Boy with, I don't remember. I actually don't remember which one. I believe it was Dynamite, but my mom watched it with me, the music video, and we were both fangirling. So my mom's a big BTS fan too. So was my sister. We were watching BTS. My jaw was on the floor because I didn't know who any of them were, but I've listened to their voices so often. So when I was watching the music video, I knew exactly which person lined up with which voice immediately. Like I could clock what part of the Fake Love song, who sang what. Didn't know their names. Now I just had like a face to the songs. Then they did like carpool karaoke. Like, well, that's when I started to get, I feel like for me, that's when I started to see them in the mainstream media. It wasn't like, then I started to watch videos, and then I found Run BTS. And Run BTS, for those of you that don't know, is like an episodic series where they play games. It's kind of like a game show, but it's just with them. And they do a bunch of different activities. One of my favorite ones that they did was they went to a zombie park, but it was, they didn't really know what was going on. Like somebody storms on the bus and it's a zombie apocalypse, and they're at a zombie park and they have to like go through this horrifying zombie escape room, basically. It's so funny. They're also the Run BTS episodes remind me of my childhood and growing up with a lot of siblings. The silly, the goofiness, the like teasing each other, but in like a loving way, and just being goofy, silly, fun, laughing, you know, almost peeing your pants. And so watching Run BTS episodes made me feel more at home. So I started to get really into watching all the Run episodes. And obviously every music video, every piece of content, every live concert of theirs, like I just would watch their YouTube, like at all the YouTube videos I could find. Learned the chant. Around the time where I watched Run episodes, like every day, sometimes I'd watch them twice, 3 times, was around the time that I had that really bad accidental like Delta 8 gummy trip. My bipolar 2 got really intense, or it like showed up for me, and my OCD got horrible and my anxiety got horrible. My panic disorder, like it just, like mentally I was broken. It was the worst experience of my life, being stuck in my brain and my body. And I've shared this before, but I was at a point where I didn't want to be here anymore, and I was mentally exhausted. For those of you that have OCD, you understand those times where it's so bad and you don't really know what's happening. And it's like just a constant loop of dread and anxiety. And then these thoughts that just won't go away. And they're scary and they're constant. And like every second of every day, I would be thinking of some type of OCD theme. I was miserable. Like I couldn't, and this was a time where I couldn't go outside. I couldn't look at the sky. I was hyper aware of being conscious, and that felt horrible to me. Just all of this existential fear, religious, crazy religious scrupulosity. One of the only things that brought me comfort, like a sense of relief from that, was BTS and those Run episodes, and also just their music videos. Like it was so uplifting to me, and I needed that through that time. I needed to just see that silliness, goofiness, ups and downs, like watching it. It would help me feel relief when I would watch their videos. And I think they just did a lot for their fans. And I I think that's like one of the only times I've really ever witnessed that, and I've seen that, and it made me appreciate them more as like an artist, and that's like their job. But I feel like they respect their fans, and so it makes you respect them more. So I'm experiencing that. I get diagnosed. I'm going through recovery. Obviously, you guys have heard this story if you've listened to my podcast a long time. But my husband, my ex-husband at the time, we were having a rough patch. I was mentally not okay, and I was seeking help. I was trying medications. I was doing everything that I could, but I was drowning still. And I remember pleading with him multiple times. Please don't give up on me. Like I'm trying. Like, can't you see that I'm trying? The way that he was treating me and talking to me and not supporting me and not comforting me, not helping me, just like annoyed that I was struggling. I felt like I was being annoying to him even though I was drowning. I felt like such a burden. Like I felt like the biggest burden to my ex-husband or husband at the time, which does not feel very good, especially when they definitely don't reassure you that you're not a burden. So I was struggling mentally. I shared this with my ex-husband. He would just shut himself in another room when I was struggling. So I would be crying. Okay, I didn't know I was going to get emotional, but I guess I'm rehashing this. I would be crying in one room, struggling mentally with OCD, and what I didn't know at the time was also bipolar disorder. He would be in another room annoyed with me and like, hurry up and get over this type of a thing. And I used to be really critical of myself. I still have that tendency naturally, but I feel a lot better at that. So having someone be annoyed with you struggling just adds on the extra layer of being critical. Anyways, so BTS was touring at this time. They had a concert in Las Vegas. I wanted to do something fun, and I was anxious about going because it's a big stadium. It's a lot of people. I had a lot of existential OCD and anxiety. So being with 40,000 people in a stadium seemed scary to me, but I was like, I want to see BTS. Like, they're my favorite group. I am going to go see them no matter what. The tickets were secured. We went to Vegas. I went with my sister and her husband and her baby. And then my ex-husband did come with me, but they just stayed at the hotel. So my sister and I went to the concert together. I bought an August D shirt. She bought a V shirt. And those were our biases at the time. They switch all the time for me. And it was the best night ever. I had so much fun. They're such good performers. I've never seen that before in a concert where it was that amazing to watch. Like, and they're good singers, but they're amazing dancers and performers. It was incredible. So I was on a high from this. I'm so excited. I come home. I'm feeling like a little bit better. I feel like alive again in some ways, and like lifted up, like a little more juice in my veins. And then 2 days later is when my ex-husband quite literally packed up his stuff in the car that I had just paid for thousands of dollars on. He made sure he got the VR set and our money jar that had a bunch of savings in it, like just cash savings we'd put in there for later vacations. He made sure he took that from the closet, and he packed up in his car and he left. And I saw him for like 5 minutes and I had no idea. So not to rehash the whole thing, but he left. We had like a 2-second conversation, which is basically me dropping to the floor in disbelief because he said, I'm leaving. Like, I just can't do this anymore. I'm like, what does that mean? We're married. You can't just like say, I can't do this anymore. Like, we're not dating. Like, do you want a divorce? What's happening? Didn't answer that question. Said, I love you. Closed the door and walked out on me. Now, back to BTS. This is where BTS comes in. The thing is, they're so woven into this crazy part of my life that now I feel like I'm stuck with them. You know, they don't know who I am, but I feel like I'm stuck with them. So they've already helped me multiple times. Okay, through really hard times with OCD, and then through my divorce. Like that concert was everything to me. And so right after my ex-husband left, I was obviously in a state of shock and confusion. Couldn't sleep, just scream crying at night for 2 days. My mom was like, okay, let's send you to California because that's where my sister lives, my only sister. So I went to California, a breath of fresh air. That's when I hacked into his Facebook and his Gmail, and we figured out that he was on Mutual, which is like a Christian dating app. or Bumble and Tinder. And he had been for the past couple of days while we were still married and doing married things together. And he was asking them for Snapchats. So I was able to hack into his Tinder, his Bumble, his mutual, and I was able to read all the messages. Now, I have a very specific memory. The reason I'm telling this is because I have a very specific memory, and I'm laughing. This is a really sad story, but and I have a specific memory. Another reason why they're dear to me. I have a specific memory of being late at night. I'm on the couch at my sister's apartment in California. We had just found out earlier that day that my ex-husband, or husband at the time, was texting other girls, Snapchatting. I was scrolling, and it was like probably 1 a.m. at this point. I had been watching BTS Run episodes, and I turned on a Jungkook live where he was like writing music. I was watching that as I was sobbing. So I had that on the background in my sister's apartment. I was laying on the couch on the left side watching the TV, but also my laptop was on the ground, and I was scrolling through all of the messages on my husband's at the time Tinder, and looking at all the messages of asking, will you marry me, to girls, asking for Snapchats, asking for all of these things. Will you marry me? Do you want to have a baby with me? So I'm like scrolling through that on the laptop. And then I have like Jungkook singing, just being funny, silly on like this live. And I'm just numb looking at these things. Eventually, I closed the laptop and I was like, okay, I should probably stop just obsessing over this and looking at this over and over again. Then I turned on other Run episodes and watched music videos, and then I fell asleep. But that was like one of the worst days of my life, but it ended with watching BTS videos on YouTube. That's just a core memory of that time in my life with my divorce, is again laying there on my sister's couch in California, bawling my eyes out as I'm scrolling through my ex-husband's messages on Tinder to other girls while we were still married, asking for Snapchats, asking, will you have my baby, marry me? And I'm just obsessively scrolling through this. But then my one source of comfort in that moment, because it was like 1 a.m., everyone else was asleep, and I just had BTS videos playing on YouTube, and it was a Jungkook live. So fast forward, kept loving BTS, still listened to their music while they were gone. I love their individual music. Like, each artist has really amazing music separately, and then all together, it's the best group to be a fan of because they produce so much stuff for their fans and so much music. That is all in all the story of why I love BTS so much. And I could, again, continue to talk about why I love them and everything that I think about their album and their song and their music video, Swim. It's all amazing. I'll just say that. I love it. I love the album. But anyways, let's move on to the point of today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed my little story, and thank you for listening to it. So the meat of today's episode, again, we're talking about the fear of being perceived. The fear of being perceived can be an incredibly painful experience because that affects a lot of areas in your life, and it definitely affects your self-image and how you hold yourself in every situation. And it does show that there's a really self-critical and loud part of yourself that can be very mean towards you and can be mean to ourselves. If someone struggles with being seen and being noticed and they kind of just want to hide in the shadows, there is a really loud self-critical part sometimes to that. And this voice or something that tells us we should hide, or that we're disgusting, or that we're gross, or that we look disgusting, or we're and I think and I don't want to misquote, so I'm not gonna really say too much on this, but I know from my people in my life that have OCD also had body dysmorphia, body dysmorphic or body dysmorphia disorder, and disordered eating. And that really plays a role into your self-image. Like when you look in the mirror, I don't have a really deep, long experience with this specific subtype or that disorder, but I do know that with OCD, I became obsessed with feeling even. And I think it started to get a little bit fuzzy with how I viewed my body. And it's still something that actually I really struggle with today. I've talked about my fear of dancing in front of people and also actually being serious about trying to dance. Or I cringe. I like almost feel disgust with myself when I see myself move in the mirror or when I dance. So there can be a lot of, again, disgust with yourself and this feeling of being icked out by yourself, being icked out by how you think you look, because you might look in the mirror and you feel this really intense self-loathing or frustration almost with how you appear. And then the next day, it could be not as bad, even though you look pretty much the same every day. But again, just like with OCD, your brain lies to you. Like there's parts of your brain that lie to you that make things way more big than they actually are. Makes you not even trust your own senses, like your sight, your brain. You might feel tricked by your senses and you feel like you can't trust it, or like what you see is not actually real, or sometimes it really is just this feeling of disgust and you're not even sure what's so horrible about yourself, but you feel like you are somehow horrible. That's incredibly painful to experience. Obviously, it affects the way you see yourself and your enjoyment of life, your ability to feel free and excited to be in your body, to experience intimacy with other people, to experience intimacy with your spouse, with your husband, your wife. It does affect a lot of things. And so it's important to be curious about that and learn about, if you struggle with that, where is that coming from? Go maybe talk to somebody about it. I really tried to think of what really great things I could say to like take away the pain of this feeling and this fear. But from my experience with recovery and OCD is doing the homework and doing something yourself, for yourself, by yourself, with a therapist, but doing like an exposure for this and really letting yourself feel the full expression of whatever that is, and then giving it a hug or letting it be there for a second. And as painful as it may be, that going through that, as we hear, is really the only way through. What that exactly looks like, it could be different for everybody, but specifically for me to share, and maybe this will relate to some people, I sometimes need to lay down, be in a dark room, be totally alone, just get some space alone, be in my car, do something that triggers this insecurity or triggers this feeling of disgust with myself, or this feeling of like I'm not good looking at all, like I am gross, whatever that feeling is, to do like a mini exposure. And obviously you can do this with a therapist too. And if you have one and you struggle with this, like it's good to like talk to them about it and see what, and come up with an exposure between you guys. What's like a good exposure you can do. So that's one way, is I am totally alone. I just kind of am curious about those feelings. And I also try to write down almost what is triggering to them, and or what triggers those feelings, what triggers those really self-conscious, like I want to hide. I want to run and hide. I feel extreme shame. And sometimes it's extreme shame about something as simple as moving my body. And I'm not a dancer, or trying to look pretty, but I don't feel pretty. And as simple things like that. Simple things, but your brain can be so mean about it and so intensely self-deprecating. And so an exposure is like, obviously, if you keep listening to this part of you that's like, yes, keep hiding, keep running, stay hidden, and this is easier said than done. Obviously, this is hard for me still. if we keep listening to that voice, and we let that be the running opinion, and we let that be the end all be all of how we're allowed to experience this life, then it's going to get louder and louder. And we are going to shrink more and more and more, and we're going to feel less like ourselves and less free to be in our body and can't really fully express ourselves in any way. So when we do these exposures, or when you find ways and you learn about what triggers it and you can do these exposures, then you're actually able to, when those feelings come, those thoughts come, you learn not to give in to them and you grow even bigger. And one example that's hopefully easy to understand is, when I was doing my dancing thing and I felt so cringy and I felt physically sick when I tried to dance because I felt so, and I don't mean to sound harsh, but this is like the wording in someone's brain that can be struggling with this is like disgusting. I keep saying that word because that's like this feeling that your brain, that this part of yourself, your brain tells you are, or tells you how you look. So when I would dance and I would just be having fun, I would feel like I had to be small, or I'd feel like my shoulders like looked gross, or whatever the thoughts were that were telling me to shrink and to stop trying and to just like go lay down. I started to dance even bigger. Like I even changed my posture to where my chest was poking out, I did the moves even bigger, and it didn't feel good at first to do that. In fact, it felt worse. But over time and doing this, I did this for months. I danced probably 2 to 3 times a week. I would turn on whatever I could find on YouTube and just did it to practice. And then I did steezy for a while. And I think I need to do it again because I'm feeling that same self-deprecation when I am moving my body, or when I'm wanting to dance, or even when I'm watching BTS stuff. I'm like, oh, what if I like learn to dance? And then like my brain's immediately like, no, you're going to look so bad. You're never going to get good at this. Like you just got to like stay small. So let's just shrink. But that's one example of like when it's telling you to shrink, grow bigger. Also the shame thing I've heard on No CD Recovery, the YouTube channel. This guy was once talking about, which I remembered. He shared that he felt a lot of like shame in public and embarrassment in public, and he was really like socially anxious. And he was scared of being seen. Like he was scared of people perceiving him as, whatever word you're scared of people perceiving you as. So he, one time as an exposure, he put his hat on like this weird way. He had his pants saggy. He like had a weird shirt on. He wore something so unlike himself, and he felt so weird walking through the streets. And he started to act weird when he was walking through the streets to purposefully kind of get this shame and this trigger of, oh my gosh, I'm being perceived a certain way. I'm going to die like this because that's how it feels. He purposefully went out, wore something weird, not like him, and then people were looking, and he just had to walk around like that. And that was a good enough exposure to where he felt this intense dread, or this, distress of I'm being perceived. And then he just had to sit with that and feel like, yes, I am being perceived. And like, I'm being perceived. And so you can get creative with what type of exposures or what you can do to let those feelings come up and then slowly, subside, to ride the wave, to surf the wave, to ride the wave of like the uncertainty of that fear. That being said, though, every time I did therapy work or exposure work for, really intense shame and self-loathing and any of that stuff, it was always a very emotional thing for me. And it was always tied to something, usually from my past. So I do very much encourage therapy or having somebody to talk through when you do them or after, because it can be a very therapeutic and cathartic experience to process it afterwards, or even during. Usually it's during for me. I don't want to give this advice or say that, just go do this and it'll be easy. Sometimes it's really heavy, and it comes with really heavy feelings and experiences and memories, or, that come along with these feelings, because there might be pulling from your past. that being said, that is a lot of the work that I've done, and that is helpful for me, like the dancing thing, like I said, just to go along with making yourself bigger when you feel like you need to shrink. It feels eventually so amazing to be able to be yourself, like to be able to express yourself, to be able to try something. And you might feel weird at first or bad at first, but then eventually over time you are going to get better. You're going to improve. That voice in your head that's so loud and critical and mean to yourself, eventually the volume's going to be turned down a bit. I've never had it go fully away, but it's definitely less powerful than it used to be. Okay, well, that's it for that part of this episode. I'll probably talk about this again soon because I had like a whole other thing that I want to talk about within the fear of being perceived and feeling small. But take up the space. Don't shrink when your brain or your OCD or your anxiety, whatever it is telling you to shrink. When you feel like shrinking, you got to teach it. You got to teach that part of yourself that like, I'm not shrinking today, not today. And it'll feel unnatural, and it might take a long time for that to feel normal, to not shrink. Looking back, you'll be really happy that you started the process of not shrinking. And I will hold myself accountable to do the same and just do stuff that sounds fun to me and good, and just do it even if I'm scared of people perceiving me or scared of people judging me or thinking I'm one way or misunderstanding me, or I don't know, whatever it is, like I will hold myself accountable to do the same. We're going to do a Dear Abbey and then end today's episode. This one's probably going to be pretty quick. It says, Dear Abbey, I love your podcast a lot. My question is, how would you deal with the guilt of moving out of your parents? I moved back in with my family and feel like it's time to get back out there again, but I feel really bad for leaving my siblings, pets, and parents. I feel too bad to even tell them. I'm not sure if you felt this way, but thank you for any feedback. My initial response to that question, and something that maybe will help ease the pain, is there might not be anything that will for sure ease the pain of that. And I don't think, and it might be okay to just have it be a painful process. Sometimes it creates more turmoil or more disconnect or more anxiety when we suppress, or not even suppress, but we just try to not think of something as a big deal, when to us it feels like a big deal, when it already is a big deal to us. So maybe just letting yourself feel all of the emotions that come up and letting yourself feel the pain of moving out again, and letting that be something that motivates you and helps you, like that feeling of wanting to be connected to your parents, to your siblings, to know what's going on, to help take care of your pets, like that love that you have for those things and those people. It can be like an extension of your love to move out and also show that love to other people that might not have it. You can extend that love to them in a different way, being further away, because it's also exciting when you move away from each other and then you come back sometime together and you can tell stories, and then when you're together it's extra special. That's always fun. Like now when I go see my family, it's like I'm here. I'm 100% here. I'm not rolling my eyes when you come into my room and leave my lights on. I'll miss those moments, and I do looking back, but now that like this is where I'm at in my life, it can be a good time to accept maybe where you're at in your life, and that when you come back together, it's a time to be super focused on each other, and it makes it really special. So there's a positive with that. I think also if you're somebody that eventually wants a family, and if you don't, then you can totally disregard this. But sometimes because of how much you love your siblings and your family, your parents, your pets, like your family, it might be time to try to start your own chapter, your own journey with that. And that's also really exciting. And that's your future family is really important. And it's just, you're all one big family, but it can help maybe ease the pain a little bit, or help the feeling of being selfish, because the reality is your family would want you to stay. I'm assuming most families are I'm assuming, it sounds like it, that your family very much loves you and you love your family and your pets and your siblings. And so I'm sure they want you to stay. I would want my siblings to stay. But also, I do want them to go, and I want them to experience their own life and feel like themselves and be able to do a bunch of cool things and get out of town and, you know, whatever they want to do. I want to support them, even if it's a little bit painful for them to be far away from me, and vice versa, me being far away from them. So I guess my main pieces of advice is try not to shut anything out of your heart to make it feel easier, because like we should try to keep that intact, our souls intact as much as possible in this world. And also, when you start to feel like you're being selfish or you feel bad for leaving, just know it's not forever either. A lot of times people move out, they come back, they move out again, and eventually when time passes, they come back again. Or maybe somebody moves to you and you have a sibling by you soon, or whatever it is. Or you might just be moving, you know, a couple, like 20 minutes away. And also, if you're scared of not being able to spend as much time, then it might feel good and you might feel more prepared for the move if you already plan out how you're going to spend time with them when you visit, or how often you're going to visit, or if you guys play anything online like video games, whatever it is, like how are you going to spend virtual time with each other if you're that far away. Because I think when you lose contact with someone, it gets harder and harder to call them. But the more you just stay and have that be a normal interaction, the more you can keep that connection alive, you know. Maybe it might feel good to focus on how beautifully painful it is to move away, and that you have people that you love so dearly and that love you so dearly. And again, deep down, to help with the guilt, I think deep down, your parents know that it's good to move out, you know, when you feel like it's time to, or when you feel like, okay, this is what I feel like I need to be doing, even if it does hurt and it is painful and it's going to make me sad, and I will miss out on some things. You'll also equally miss out on other things if you don't. So your parents know that. Even if they're also very sad, they know that it's good if you feel like that's what you want to do, and there's good things that'll come from that. Okay, I think that's it for today's episode. Thank you for sending in the Dear Abbey. I always love to have more, but thank you guys always for sending in the Dear Abbeys. If you want to support the podcast, you can leave a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify, as well as you can subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube. I post all of my podcast episodes on there. I hope you guys have a wonderful, beautiful day. And if you haven't listened to BTS's new album, listen to it. You have to listen to it a couple of times, and then the songs, you start to like them a little bit more. Same with every album. I normally don't like albums at first, and then I like them. But anyways, thank you for listening. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Love you guys. Bye. 우회전 taking a ride to jointly 눈치 보면서 들어가 할 때 찾아 나머진 바빠 개설레임 바꾸는 사람들